Our big topic for today is accessing the user's camera or the user's photo library. We'll be building out an application, a collection view of images. So at the end of the lesson, you will be able to access the user's camera, right? You want to build an application, you will be able to get access to the user's camera. You will be able to get the photo that the user selected. And that photo, that image, you'll be able to put that image into your image view. Remember, UIImagePickerController is a container for an image. So you get an image from the user's camera that they take, like real-time camera, or they selected a photo from the photo library. Two places. Either the user uses the camera, or the user uses the photo library to get an image. Everybody with me? So we'll be able to get that image into our collection view cell. That's the big goal of the day. Other goals that will come along with building that application out: can I persist that image when I stop the app and I run the app again? Okay? For our lab, we need to be able to persist that image. Is a UI image a property list? Can I take a UI image directly and put it into documents directory as a property list? No, I cannot. So we will take that image, we'll convert that image to a data type, a data object, and we'll associate that data object with our custom type. Our custom type needs to conform to what in order for it to be a property list?
What was the custom?
I heard it?
Was it T?
Codable, right? Some codable, right? Or encodable. If I want to take my object and encode it to data, it needs to conform to either codable or encodable. Great. So along the way, we'll see different parts of building an iOS application, like a full iOS application. We will see custom delegation, as I said before, but keep in mind that we will come back to that topic again many times. It's one of those topics, it takes a while, it takes a bit of practice to really understand what's happening, because custom delegation has many moving parts to it. Right? But we'll start off by building our collection view, selecting an image from the user's photo library or the camera, and having that image into our collection view cell. Okay? On the simulator doesn't have access to the camera. We also will come across how do we add or how do we make sure that the device has a camera. If it doesn't have a camera and you try to access the camera, the app will crash. So that's one of those things we have to take care of. We have to be defensive with that. What if it's an iPod Touch, right? Does it still have a camera? It has a camera? I can't remember. iPod Touch, anybody? Those iPod Touch, does it have a camera? Can't remember. It has a camera now, right? I think at some point it didn't have a camera.
I think it was like the first one.
Yeah, something like that, right? I'm a bit older there. But if the device doesn't have a camera, you need to check. First check if I have a camera. If I have a camera, great, go ahead and use the camera. We will also access the info property list, very similar to having HTTP where you have the ATS transport, right? If you have an HTTP, not HTTPS URL, you have to go to the info list and change or add a property. Everybody with me? With the camera, we introducing asking the user's permission to access the camera, right? There was a point in iOS where that was not a thing, right? You could just like access stuff. But as developers are getting more mischievous, right? You give them an inch, they take a mile. They start to be more, right? Like, I have access to whatever, I could just do whatever I want, right? So that introduced Apple to be more stringent with what you're accessing. Even with macOS now, everything you install now, you need access to it. Before Catalina, that wasn't a thing. But people are being more mischievous in their behaviors. You have to, it's like one of those things, right? You give everybody a drone, they go crazy. When something bad happens, then we go proactive, right? We're not reactive, reactive, we're not proactive, right? So we give you everything to play with, you play with it. When bad things start happening, we take it back. So that's what's happening with the camera. With the camera, to access the camera, you need to ask the user's permission. If you do not have that key, your app will crash. So we need to add that key specifically to say, hey, user, application X wants access to your camera, is that okay? Right? At that point, it's up to the user to say yes or no. If it's a camera app, the user says no, then I guess the app, right, is not useful at that point. So we'll see how to do that there along the way. So keep in mind there's new topics we'll be discussing, but I'll make my best, as I did previously, to break it up. So we introduce the camera, we get an image, awesome, we might take a break, come back again. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I was just curious, for that like camera, that notification, is that entirely on the developer's end? Like, I kind of assumed that like maybe the iPhone would check and like force that pop-up to come up.
So the pop-up comes from iOS,
Okay.
right? But it won't come up if you don't include the key. If you don't include the key, the app will crash. So when you include the key, you have to include a string as well saying, my awesome app needs access to your camera because it's the best photo app ever.
So there's no like way that a developer can put in an app that doesn't ask for that promise?
If they're using the camera, no.
Okay.
Cool? Again, like I think iOS 5 or whatever, at some point they added all those restrictions there because companies were just getting like out of hand doing stuff, right? And you never want that there to happen. I think, yeah, the Contacts app was one of those. The Contacts really started things because there was a company called Path, and then what they did, they accessed the user's address book or whatever it was, the contacts, and they push everything on their server. So that was the thing. But now, if you need access to your contacts, there's a dialogue for that. Yes?
How is giving permission for access to them like,
I mean, they could still do stuff, but at least you know you gave them explicit access.
I'm saying before they were just able to get in and like knew it, but you didn't give permission. So this is more like a liability thing. Like,
This is like a liability thing. It's also lets the user be aware. It's like location, right? Like that app is using your location. Like you'll get some dialogue at some point, like still using your notifications. So it really makes you aware. Like maybe I want to turn that app off, or maybe I haven't used that app forever. Why is it still using my location, right? But the camera is like an exact access to your camera. If you don't give them access, you could change that later. If you don't give them access, then you won't be able to take a photo. That's it. They can't do anything manipulative with that if they have access to the camera there, unless it's like a Mac OS app, right? That'll take, you know where that goes. There's more security flaws there that they could do things with the laptop when you have access to your camera. That little light turns green, and then they're seeing you now. But that's not on the phone, so don't worry about it. Okay, cool. So let's get started, or let's continue. Any questions so far? So there's a lot of topics we'll discuss. We'll discuss custom delegation. First, we'll discuss UIImagePickerController. This is getting the actual camera to show on screen. So let's delve into the app actually. Let's go continue. So this is the starter project. The starter project has a collection view of cells, and each of those cells will have an image. At the bottom, we have an add button here. The add button, when we press on that add button, it will prompt the user for two options. If those two options are available, the user will see those two options. What are the two options? One, can I use the camera? Two, can I access the photo library? So the user has a choice of either or. Do they want to take a photo, or do they want to access their library? Everybody with me? Very similar to any app that you use, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it. You want to make a post. Either you make a post from an actual photo you take, or you make a post from a photo in your library. Okay? So we'll use an action sheet to bring that up to the user. What does it do now if I press add here? Nothing. Perfect. So everybody has the app at that point, that starting point here. Yes? Okay, cool. And I built out as best of a scaffold as I could without adding new items on it that we haven't seen yet. If you come across something you haven't seen yet, please let me know. And we'll go over it. Let me take that up a bit more here.
Did we finish lecture on
Friday.
Did we go over everything?
What did we build on Friday? Is the scheduler app? Yeah, that scheduler app is on GitHub. It has everything you need to finish your project.
No, just that we didn't go over everything.
If there's anything in particular aligned, bring it up to me, and then we could talk about it. Okay? Yes?
That'd be everything.
Go to image picker at the very top, the project, and you might have to change the team ID.
Yeah, to mine, right?
Yes.
And then it says fail to register bundle identifier, try again, and then there's.
Change the bundle identifier to like your name, like com.mail.imagepicker, and then press enter. The bundle ID in here, right? The bundle identifier here on screen. Yeah, just change it to like com.mail.imagepicker, press enter. Cool? Perfect. Okay, so what do we have in this starter project? Let's just go over the files really quickly. We have our data persistence folder. That's what we went through on Friday. Luba, is there a question? What's the question? Okay. So we have our data persistence files. We have our file manager extension that just gets us access to the documents directory. We have our persistence helper, which saves to the documents directory. We have our image object. Let's see the image object for a second. So the image object, as with every project you work on or every app you work on, even if it's a simple image you're dealing with, please make it an object. Everybody with me? Because you'll want to save it at some point or you'll want to do something with it at some point. Yes, it's only an image that we are persisting or saving or whatever at some point, but keep in mind that you want to create an object at minimum. Have an object, not just have an image. What can you do with an image? An image by itself is not an exact data object. Okay? That image could have a date, like it has a date, the date it was taken. That image could have an ID. Right? We know how useful IDs are when we work with our JSON data. Really try to have an identifier on your object that you create. Right? That way you could see, is that ID equal to that ID I'm looking for? A quick way to create an ID in iOS is to use the UUID here. It's a type. So you could use that UUID and get a string from it. That string you get from it is a unique string. It's a unique string, a unique ID. You have nothing to worry about. Right? So that's how to create a quick ID on your object. So our object at minimum has an image data object. Why image data? We can't take UIImage, and UIImage is not quotable. UIImage is not a property list, so we have to take that UIImage and convert it to data. So what we save to our documents directory will be some sort of data object. And when we retrieve that data object, we'll convert that data object to a UIImage. Right? So thankfully, the API is very good for that. We have our UIImage data initializer, and we have our data object to convert to UIImage to convert to data. It's very easy to go back and forth there. So that's great. So that's our model. That's our image object model. Any questions about the identifier or anything there?
Yeah, can you just go over the UUID?
Okay, so the UUID is a class that gives us access to creating a unique identifier. Yeah, that's it. So every object will have its own ID. Next up, we have our cell. Our cell doesn't have much going on. We only have an image. We could do more things there. We could have a label with the date and all that stuff there, but that's not the objective of the lecture. The objective of the lecture is just to get an image from the camera roll or the camera into our app. We're making the layer of the cells here. We're making the layer of the cells here rounded. We all see rounded rects, right? The way we make the rounded rects is using the layer on the cell. So when I say layer dot corner radius, that's saying the layer of the cell, make it rounded, and give it some number. And we have one image view. Awesome. That takes us into our images view controller. Our images view controller has a collection view. Our view controller has its data source, or its data will be image objects, an array of image objects. Our view did load, the only thing we're doing right now is setting our data source and setting our delegate. For now, we're returning a hard-coded number of 50 cells. Again, if you're testing out your app, there's no need to go through API or anything like that. See if your collection view actually works as it should, right? So like 50 cells, you see how the thing scrolls, it scrolls correctly. So the only thing you need to do now is get data. Everybody with me? Anytime you're setting up like a table view or collection view, get some dummy data cells in there, and then go ahead and first, like I would push that to GitHub, collection view works. And then come back and put your data into it. Awesome. Next, we have the cell for all. Nothing happening there yet. It just returns a cell, and we downcasting it to our cell type. Our cell type is an image cell. And here we're doing some math to return 80%. The big part here is we're returning 80% the width of the device, right? So I get the width of the device by line 41. Line 41 gets the width of the device, right? UI screen.main is a singleton. Bounds.size is a CG size object, and get me the width. Get me the width of the device. And from that width of the device, 80% of it will be the width of my items or my cells. Everybody? Yes?
Is this related to what is the constraints thing, or?
It just relates to the size of this actual cell, the width of it. Okay. And the height, we make the height the same as the width. So it's a square. Everybody? Right? So keep in mind that your item size for row, that CG size object here, it returns two floating numbers. One floating number is for the width of the cell. And the second floating number there, the height, is the height of the cell. Everybody with me? Based on the design of your application, you could go ahead and do the math accordingly. Yes? Okay. Okay, so let's actually keep working here. What's the first thing I want to do? Let's see. We don't have that working yet. So when we click on this button here, we want to have an action sheet to pop up. So let's work on that first. Let us open up the assistant editor. Assistant editor. Get to our storyboard here. Option click on our view controller. And we want to get an action going. I'll put an action right here. So we'll put an action right below our view did load. So we'll drag an action from our toolbar. On my storyboard, what do I have here? I dragged in a toolbar to the bottom of my scene. Everybody with me? This is a toolbar. Here we have a toolbar. Actually, let's redo this one so we could do it together. Delete this toolbar. I don't think it's connected to anything. Delete the toolbar, everybody. Yes? Click on the toolbar, delete it, and let's add the toolbar again together, since that's a new thing we have here. So go to your object library and search for toolbar. Drag in a toolbar right at the bottom here with the blue guidelines. So we're dragging in a toolbar, correct? Yes? Okay, perfect. Almost. Okay, let's set the constraints for the toolbar. So click on the toolbar and add new constraints. And the constraints for the toolbar will be 0 to the lead-in, 0 to trailing, and 0 to the bottom. 3 constraints for the toolbar. And add 3 constraints. So 3 constraints for the toolbar. Great. Now we have some sort of item. The item is a UI barbell item, but right now it's all the way to the left. How do we center it? Anybody knows how to center this? What's that? Just drag it, right? Did it stick in the center? You did this, or it's gonna go back. We could use what's known as a flexible item. So let's go back to our library here. Go back to the library and type in flexible. Type in flexible or flex. You'll see flexible space for barbell item come up. Yes, do we see that? So we need to drag 2 of those. We'll drag one to the left of the item, and we'll drag one to the right of the item. That's actually gonna center our item. Everybody? So let's go ahead and drag the first one. So my flexible space, I'll drag it over. I'll put it to the left of my item here. Okay? Now it pushed it all the way to the right. Everybody sees that? Now let's drag one more. Get a flexible item again. And put it to the right. And now it's centered. Why am I having one constraint issue here? Collection view needs height. Oh, I messed up the collection view. Okay, so your item should be centered, but in deleting, we deleted the collection view's height constraint. Let's fix the height constraint for the collection view. Does everybody bob an item center?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's fix the constraint for the collection view. Click on your collection view, and let's see what constraints we have here. Go to the size inspector for the collection view. And we have trailing, we have leading, we have top. Oh, but we don't have bottom. So let's get the bottom of the collection view. Click on your collection view, go to add new constraints, and add 0. Add one constraint, 0 to the bottom. Everybody? 0 to the bottom of the collection view, add constraint. Okay? At this point, we shouldn't have any more errors with constraints. So what we've done so far, we've fixed the constraint height on the collection view, it needs a height, and we centered our item, our bobbin item, okay? And then what we have here, we dragged in a toolbar, okay? Basically, the flexible is a way like a spacer. Think of it like a spacer. If you want to have, in our case, we want to center the item. We use 2 flexible items. They center, they push everything to the center here with our item. If we wanted it left aligned, we have 1. If we want it center, we have 2 on either side.
But you can also have more items.
Yeah, you could have more items. Yeah. You could have more items. You could have whatever you want in there. Cool? Great. Okay, so let's click on our item. Let's click on our item. Go to the attributes inspector. And let's get an image for our item. So for my item, I will search for add. I put DD, that still came up, that's awesome. Search for add here, and I select plus. Okay, so now we are back to where we were before, or where the app was before. So we have an add button. Everybody? Cool? Great. Any questions with what we've done so far? Any questions? Yes? Centered or left aligned or right aligned, or you could have 3 items and you want them centered. You could have multiple flexible items in there. Basically, they're used for spacing, right? Spacing the UI based on what you want. In the toolbar, yeah. Okay, cool. You could do it in code too. When we get to code, you could also do that in code. Anything you could do in storyboard, well, almost anything you could do in storyboard, you could do in code, vice versa. Okay.
Alex?
Yes, sir.
The flexible bar button item, can that be used as a button, or is it only for spacing?
No, it cannot be used as a button, only for spacing.
Okay.
Yeah, I cannot click on it, it has no action. Very good. Very, very good. All right, so let us go to control dragging our action now. What did we say? Right below viewed load. So right below viewed load, we'll control drag from our item. If you have a difficulty selecting your item, you could simply use the document outline to select your item here. And we will control drag from our item over to our view controller. We'll change it to a UI bobbin item for the type. And we'll say add picture button pressed. Perfect. Cool. I think that's all we need for now with storyboard. So we could close storyboard and focus on our view controller. Okay, so when the user clicks on this add picture button pressed, before we do anything, I just want to make sure it works on everybody's computer. So let's put a simple print statement in there and say button pressed and run the app and make sure this works. Okay, so I click on my button, and in my console, I see button press. Everybody could confirm that? Everybody confirms that?
Yes.
Tanya? You have the project that we're working with? Okay, cool. All right, so we all confirm this is working. Let's go to actually coding out our logic. What do we want to do here? We want to present an action sheet to the user. The actions will be camera, photo library, or cancel. Okay. So what we'll be using to present those actions to the user is anybody? What view controller are we using? Or what controller are we using for this? An alert controller, right? So we'll be using an alert controller to set up our actions and to present that alert controller to the user. And we'll be changing the type of alert to an action sheet as opposed to an alert. An alert is a dialogue in the center, and the action sheet from the bottom. Cool? Yes? Alert, dialogue in the center, and action sheet comes from the bottom. We'll see what that looks like if you haven't seen the action sheet. Okay, so let's start off with an alert controller. Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. So here we have a UI alert controller, and we're using the initializer that takes in a title message. Okay? So for the title, it does take an optional. We won't put a title here, and we won't put a message here. The preferred style, what's the style? Action sheet. So here we have styles. If I just do dot, let's see the options we have. So we have an action sheet which scrolls from the bottom of the device. And we have an alert which centers on the iPhone. Everybody with me? I have a window, it's centered if I choose alert here. But we won't choose alert, we'll use an action sheet. That's the preferred choice there on iOS for an iPhone. So we use action sheet, and we could just write our logic for presenting it. So here we'll just simply say present alert controller, animated true, completion. If you do not have a completion, you could put a nil, or you could simply remove the word completion altogether, since we have no completion. But the completion happens if you want something to happen after you present, you could have a completion block. But for our use case, we don't have anything else happening after the thing got presented, so our completion block is nil. Okay. What does that alert controller need? As we said here in our comments, we need to have a camera action and a photo library action and a cancel action. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll start off by giving it a name here. We'll call it camera action. So camera action is of type UI alert action. So the controller is the thing you actually present. The action is every button on that controller. Everybody? So here we have a UI alert controller action, and it does take a title. For our title, we'll say camera. You could put in any string you want in there. As far as like the string is the thing appearing on the button, so give it a descriptive name. In that case, we want the user to know it's the camera they're after. So we click in camera here. The style of it. Cancel is obviously cancel here. Default, we'll choose default as the style. And later, when we delete it, anytime you want to delete or anything you want to do that causes your data to change, right? Like the user is about to delete something, you want to use destructive. Okay? Destructive makes your title red. Everybody with me? So the user knows, oh, I'm about to delete a photo. Do I want to do that, right? So if you want to do some destructive action, destructive. If you want to do some modifying action to the data, to the user's data, use the destructive style. So our style will be default here. because camera is not destructive, right, unless it blows up here. And the handler, very important. The handler, we'll need that handler here, but we will add it in later. But the handler is what do I do, completion handler. What do I do when the user clicks on the camera button, right? What do I do when the user clicks on the camera button? That is the handler here. Very similar to our completion handler in our network stuff, right? The completion is extra code to happen after an event happens. In here, when I click on the camera button, what happens? The user expects the camera or something to show, right? So we'll put the code in there. But for now, delete it, and we'll add it in later. Again, it could be nil. We'll come back to it. Next action, we're not gonna copy paste. I know let's just type it in again. Next action is photo library action. And this is a UI alert action. And our title will simply be photo library. Our style will be default. And again, we'll come back to our handler later. Great. Next up, let's have a cancel action. You have to put in the cancel action. So here we'll put a cancel action, and it is UI alert action. Title is cancel, and style is cancel. No handlers for this. Perfect. So we have our 3 actions. We can't leave the code because it's not done, right? We have warnings here. The compiler is saying things, right? I'm not using those constants. So each action we need to add manually to the alert controller. It would be awesome for the alert controller to have like an array of actions, right? That would be great. But it doesn't, so we need to add them individually. So let's go ahead and do that. So alert controller, add action. We'll add in camera action. Alert controller, add action, photo library action. And the last action we have here, alert controller dot add action, we have cancel action. And build, make sure you have no errors at this point. So here, when the user clicks on add picture button pressed, or when the user clicks on that button, on the add button, we'll present an action sheet, and the action sheet will have 3 options for some action for them to carry out. Yes?
Do they appear as they were added in the alert?
They will in that case, except for the destructive, if you have a destructive action, or the cancel action is always at the bottom. Okay? All right, let's run it and test to see if we do have our action sheet appearing. So if we click on the add button here, right? So the order we added in, we have the camera first, right? Christian, to your point here, and then we have the photo library, okay? And then the cancel is at the bottom. It's always at the bottom here, or a delete or whatever it is. So here the user cannot do it, well, they could click on here since they have the modal, but if I click on camera, nothing happens yet. If I click on photo library, nothing happens yet. And if I click on cancel, nothing happens. But it just dismisses my action sheet. So, Yulia, this is an action sheet. If I changed it to, say, alert here, and run it again. So we change action sheet to alert, and we clicked on it, right? This is not the better UI here, right? So this is the alert centers onto the screen. Cool? Users are accustomed to something like that, it will appear from the bottom, right? Exactly, exactly. So this is the 2 differences between the 2 different alert sheets. Everybody? Or alert styles. So there's action and there's alert. So change it back to action sheet. Great. Okay, so when the user, let's get to our photo library first. When the user clicks on the photo library, we want to show something. All right, any questions so far before we continue? Yes? Antonio, is it possible to take a look at Tiffany's computer? She has a constraint issue there. Thank you, buddy. Any other questions? Okay, so let's keep going here. Let's create a function below here. Whoa. Let's create a function below our add picture button pressed. We'll create a function, we'll call it show image controller. We write a function, we call it show image controller. That function will have a parameter called is camera selected, which is a bool. So we want to know if the user selected the camera or not. Simple Boolean, right? Because that'll determine a lot of things, right? Like if the user selected the camera, you want to first see if there's a camera on the device. Or we could probably even do it earlier, actually. Let us do it earlier. But if they have a camera here, we'll change the source type of it. Let's do that first. Before I actually add the camera here, for example, if we run the app, the simulator, as we said before, let me run again. The simulator, as we said before, does not have access to the camera, correct? If it doesn't have access to the camera, there's no reason to show camera, okay? So let's fix that. Let us fix that. So right where we add in the camera action right here, let us check if camera is available. If camera is not available, the app will crash. Okay? We'll show how that's happening later, but for now, let's just take care of it and see if the camera is available. So how do we do that? We'll say if UIImagePickerController dot is source available, and the source we're looking for is camera. So UIImagePickerController is the source type camera. Is it available? If it is available, then we'll go ahead and add the camera action. Okay? So that line of code right there should take care of our app right now. If there's no camera, you won't see a camera button, right? I have no camera, I only see photo library. Everybody with me? But if I was to run that same app on my phone here, if I was to run that same app on my device, so this is my device here. If I was to run the same app on my device and I click on the add button, take this out of here, I do have camera and photo library. Everybody sees that? Same code base, different outcome. The phone has a camera, I see camera. The simulator doesn't have a camera, I do not see the camera. Yes?
When the app is on the App Store, it shouldn't be available to download for the
Well, if you still have access, every device has access to the photo library, but if it's a photo taking app, then no. If it's a photo taking app explicitly without just accessing, like I could use Instagram without ever taking a photo, right? It is a photo app, right? But every app still should give you access to the photo library for content. Does that make sense? All right, cool. At this point, some of us have devices? Some of us have devices running on, right? It works correctly, yes? If you're looking for dongles, please see Aaron. He's distributing the dongles over so that we could run our, did he run away?
He has a meeting right now, but I am in the back of the dongles if you need them. If you need an iPhone to use this. Yeah, it's like right there.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So the button check has nothing to do with permissions, right?
We have no permissions yet. There's no permissions yet. Like we haven't done anything explicit to say, hey, I want to get access to the camera.
So as long as there's a camera, it will show.
Yes, exactly. But do I have access to that camera yet? No. Cool. Yes, sir.
I'm getting 17,
Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break and come right back. Because people are getting dongles, right? Let's take a 5-minute break. Come back promptly at 11:10. Everybody with me? 11:11. Come back at 11:11.